Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. How you doing today? It is Monday, and you know what that means. We start with the legend, Greg Dickerson. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. Michael, how are you on this July 5th of 2021?
Man, can you believe the year's half over?
Yeah, it's fast. Yeah,
It
it's
is
it's more than
fast.
half over.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's more than half over. You're absolutely right. So, hey, one of the things that you and I have talked about for a while, it really started. I think you've brought it up several times, but we went hard. I think it was 3 or 4 weeks ago when Jamie Dimon said he had $500 billion in cash, right? And we talked about why he's doing that. Now we're starting to get questions from folks that follow you. Is like, I love Greg, but I need to know, where does he park his cash? Because people are like, all right, he's been doing this a while. I love the fact that you always talk about it's better to get out at the top than get in at the bottom. There's so many things, words of wisdom you've given us. But where do you park your cash? Do you just divide it up at bank accounts, or what does Greg do with this cash that you're stacking?
It just depends. So the answer to that question depends on how much you're parking, right?
Hmm.
And there's a difference between parking 400 or 500 million and
Yeah.
parking 20, 30 million or a million or two or a few 100,000 or whatever. So
All right.
different
So
levels.
let's break this down. Let's assume first person is 250 grand, right? They have 250 grand that they've put away. That is their investment money. So we'll think they have the emergency fund and all that stuff somewhere else. So somebody's accumulated 250 grand in cash. That's person A.
Mhm.
What?
So,
Yeah.
it depends on how liquid it needs to be, how quickly you need access to it. So, I always keep a certain amount in a money market so that you have quick access to it. You don't have to worry about it. Generally it earns, a little bit of interest as interest rates go up, and the Fed wakes up and
Yeah.
stops the non stops the insanity.
Yeah.
You can earn a little bit of yield on that. You can put it into a CD if you want to lock it up longer term. So that's another avenue for it. Some people will put it just into a regular savings account. So a lot
Yeah.
of different things. So with companies and businesses, I always kept a interest bearing savings account to move
Mm-hmm.
money back and forth. Just for the operating
Yep.
budget, and kept a year's worth of cash flow in there. Pretty much at all times.
Yeah.
From a personal standpoint, I keep some readily available to deploy if an opportunity comes up, so that it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't cost
Yeah.
anything to move it. And then, I don't really talk about where, I store, cash and other things, because I don't want to influence anybody or
Yeah.
encourage anybody to do anything or not doing
Me
anything. Because
too.
you could put them into ETFs, you could put them into treasuries, you could put them into bonds, you could put it into cryptos, you could put it into stocks. So
Yeah.
there's so many places you can store cash that's liquid, but have different levels of risk and things like that. So, for
Yeah.
me, just your general accessible cash, the best places are savings account, money market, so you've got access to them quickly.
Yeah.
As those balances increase, you can put them in more longer term things. You can borrow against them to deploy in and out if you need to. So there's more sophisticated vehicles, and I've used those where I've had the money invested in other things, and I just had a line of credit at the bank. So if I wanted to tap that cash, I could. But you got to know what you're doing, for
Yeah.
that kind
Yeah, for me, the answer is very similar, right? What I've done with just a subtle twist is I would tell people what's an average deal in your market, right? In my market, let's just say I can pick up sometimes a wholesale house that needs to close in 10 days or less for about 150 to 180 grand. So I want to make sure that I always have, to your point, 250 cash in a money market or a high yield savings account, right?
of.
That's the first place. I don't try to outthink it, right? If you start to outthink, so again, for me, if a quickly accessible deal is 150 grand and I've locked up a bunch of money that's expensive or slow to get to, it doesn't help me. So I always have that. And again, this is outside emergency fund, outside, for owning some properties. It's investment capital. I don't overthink it. I just don't. It's like, even if I get zero, it doesn't matter to me, because that's a bullet in the chamber that I want to deploy, and I'll deploy it
Mhm.
as fast as possible. So very similar. Um,
So there's also ETFs and mutual funds. There's almost the same kind of thing. They're a
mhm,
basket of
mhm.
assets that the price is pegged to.
Yeah.
So those can be interesting. Now here's the new thing, and this is something for people to study because it can be very risky.
Mhm.
Is there's a whole move to what's called DeFi, decentralized finance, and there's companies out there like SoFi. That's one of the
Mhm.
most popular
Okay.
that people know. It's called social finance, SoFi.
Mhm.
And that's where anybody can go, get a loan. They can, it's for the unbanked. They can put money in
Oh,
there and kind of use it, move it around the world, things like that. Well, you can deposit on there, either cash or cryptocurrencies and earn high rates of interest because then they turn around and loan it out. So
Interesting.
there's other areas that you can put cash into now that's becoming more and more popular. It's mostly through the cryptocurrency market, but it's called decentralized finance, DeFi, and it's called staking, where you can stake different companies and applications and things like that and earn high rates of interest. But you got to be very careful because a lot of those are scams, kind of like the whole Mark Cuban thing. If you've heard that, where he got scammed,
Yeah.
he was staking in one of those companies. So you have to make sure that you've got, like, Coinbase. Coinbase is a publicly held company now. You can stake on Coinbase and earn interest on your money. So there's a lot of different ways now that you can earn cash on earn yield on cash that you weren't able to do, but you got to lock it up. It's kind of like a CD. You got to lock it up for 6 months, 1 year, 18 months. The longer you lock it up, the more money you can earn. I mean, some of these things are paying 8, 10, 15%.
Wow. Yeah. I've not looked at any of those. Not in my wheelhouse for sure, but that's interesting. I will look that up. SoFi. I wrote that down. And DeFi.
SoFi is one. That's a social finance company. They're basically, almost like a bank, but it's decentralized to a degree. Then you have Coinbase. Coinbase is a cryptocurrency exchange. They're a publicly traded company, the first one, and they offer depository staking, where you can put cash on their platform. You can buy tokens, like a USDC, that's pegged to the US dollar, and you can stake it there and get interest. So that's becoming more and more popular, more and more mainstream, and you're going to see a lot more of those come up. But you got to be real careful and make sure, that you know what you're dealing with, and it's something that's been around for a while. And FDIC insured, platforms like Coinbase, makes a big difference.
Okay, very cool. So now let's just do one more person, because most of us don't play in the 10s and 20s and 30 million world. Let's assume, for whatever reason, maybe you sold a house, or you're 60 years old, you've been saving forever. Let's assume you're sitting on $1 million, right? The first one was 250. This one's $1 million. And let's also kind of do the same thing, right? Your average deal is 150K. So you have, I don't know what that would be, 4x, 4.5x of, more cash than a single deal would be. Do you kind of divide that up? Do you still keep 250 kind of set aside? It's like quick capital. And then do you look at the others, or you just create 4 bank accounts, or what do you kind of do there? You think?
No, I mean, I don't worry about that. I don't worry about that in terms of bank accounts for, limits, to try to keep it under 250, but some people do.
Yeah.
But if you have $1 million or $2 million laying around, same rules would apply. It really changes when you get into the, 5, 10 million range and up, where you're going to change the bank that you put your money in, because some banks have bigger limits. That's where you have your investment banks like, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, even Bank of America, Wells Fargo. They all have their, higher level investment banking services that they offer. So they'll put you into some different things that earn a little bit more yield, that are a little safer.
Okay.
Nothing is guaranteed, but
Sure.
they're insured products, things like that. You have annuity products that you can get into. You have higher yielding, longer term. You have shorter term. So, there's some general services there that you can get into. So if you don't really know, and you've got a sum of money, the best thing to do is start talking to the wealth department of some of those banks, and they can kind of help you understand different options that are out there, so that you can educate yourself and you're not making these moves on your own.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, folks, if you don't know, there is, I think it's 250 grand today is the FDIC limit. That's what I was referring to in dividing up your money. There are people that go, I'm not going to keep $1 more than 250 grand at any financial institution.
Yeah.
That was a big thing when this whole thing started 14 months ago. I don't know what's going on. The world's going to come to, and I knew there were people that have started opening up multiple bank accounts. It's like, I'm going to go there, and I'm going to go there, I'm going to go there. It's probably not much of a concern now that we're coming out of it. But yeah, it does rear its ugly head at different times. So again, for me, when I think about this, whether it's 250 or $1 million, my job is to find and get deals. I suppose there's a time I do need to look at it, right? Because interest rates are very partly really low today. But yeah, my capital is there is to deploy. And there's a couple of things that I would do if I had $1 million cash just sitting around. One is I would peel off some that my investment capital, that, the bullet in the chamber analogy. But the other one is I would look for other ways to use it in my business. For example, one thing I did is I did my first hard money loan, right? There was somebody that was doing a wholesale deal that actually had stock money to buy it, but because of the time period, they couldn't liquidate soon enough. So I came in for 45 days, 12% interest, 2 points, that was cool. First position was paid off, 50 days later. So that was cool. I did that. So that was something I looked at to get a little higher yield, but it had to be really secure, right? I think, is it Warren Buffett that says the first rule is not to lose principal, and the second rule is don't forget rule number one.
Yeah, don't lose money. Now, so that's the other side of the coin. So everything we talked about at first was highly liquid.
Mm-hmm.
So highly liquid places to store your cash and stack. Now, if you want to talk about less liquid, like what you're talking about there, where you can do transactional funding that's shorter term, can be 1 day to 3 days to 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
You can do private lending, where you go in and lend money to, investors, real estate investors, like a bank on the property, and get 8 to 10 to 12%, depending on who it is, what it is, where it is. So you could create your own little private lending program. A lot of high net worth individuals do that. I have a lot of clients that do that, that I help them with that. And, so that's another way to do it. Another way is store it in real estate itself, and then have lines of credit ready so that you can do that. Depending on your business, when you say business, I've never been one to recommend pouring cash into your business unless you're going to exponentially grow your net profits, in relation to where it could be deployed elsewhere into like a private lending program or, some other asset. But again, none of those are, immediately liquid. You have to have credit facilities available and set up so that you can tap that equity if you need to.
Yeah, totally cool. Well, this has been a lot of fun, folks. Again, thinking about where you do with the cash. Again, for me, it's about being ready to pounce. That's who I am as a real estate investor. It's not about getting that extra percent interest, at least not currently. Maybe I'll change my mind when I slow down, but that's what it is for me. Greg, how can people follow you, get part of your world? Because you're doing some amazing things.
Yeah, gregdickerson.com, my website, all my social links, YouTube channel, everything is on there, gregdickerson.com.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate your time.